Ah, the capital. The place to be. Well, except if you're an Avox, or Snow and Tigris during the Dark Days, or any of the participants in the Hunger Games. Or if the capital is located right here, right in the center of all of this. According to the Hunger Games Adventures, the official Facebook game, this is what all of Panem looks like. And who would have thought that a map used from the now defunct Facebook game that hasn't been updated since September 27th, 2012 would be the official map of Panem, as it was used in the adaptation of the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. You can see it right here when self-proclaimed amateur magician, decent weatherman, and potential relative of Caesar Flickerman, Lucretius Lucky Flickerman, takes a break from the Hunger Games to give you an update on the weather. So I guess this is the most accurate representation of Panem we got. And it looks like the state of Florida was just taken completely out of the equation. Panem is made up of 13 districts and one capital. The capital is a place of excess and more excess, and just a whole heck of a lot of excess. Everyone is incredibly judgmental of everybody else, and it's a society where new is always better. Back in the day, Coriolanus Snow had to defend himself for renewing his father's clothing that he wore to certain events, so it's incredibly materialistic. The capital treats everyone from the districts as garbage, and they look at the victors as celebrities, meaning they're gonna treat them as not people. The point that I'm trying to make here is that if you're of the ages of 12 through 18, the capital's the place to be. But if you're not, well, tough luck, because you're poor and you have potential of going into the Hunger Games. But wait a second, what are the districts of Panem like? If only someone could make a really toasty video talking about all of the districts of Panem. Before we get into this dystopian world, sometimes it can be difficult being a person in our own dystopia. But luckily, today's sponsor, BetterHelp, is over here providing the world's largest therapy service that is 100% online. The number one thing I hear from everyone, including myself, is that finding the right therapist can be incredibly difficult. So this puppy, having 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists, definitely gives you some options. BetterHelp's goal is trying to make therapy more affordable and accessible. Me personally, I really like the online part because then you're not limited to the options in your area and you don't have to drive like an hour to see someone. And BetterHelp's gonna make the process real easy for you because all you have to do is answer this questionnaire, specifically talking about your needs and preferences in therapy. And then what are they gonna do? They're gonna match you with a personalized therapist from their network. And after that, you can talk to your therapist over text, chat, video call, voice call, whatever you feel comfortable with. And then you can message them at any time and then schedule live sessions when it's convenient for you. And let's say hypothetically, you're like, my therapist is pretty cool, but I'm feeling like they're not the right fit. Not a problem, because you can switch to a new therapist at no additional charge. With BetterHelp, you're getting the same professionalism and quality that you would get from in-office therapy, but with the therapist that's custom picked for you, and with more flexibility and at an affordable price. If that all sounds pretty rad, you can get 10% off your first month by clicking on this link in the description below. Anyway, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, let's start with District 1. The district that is the most buddy-buddy with the capital, as they reside right above it. If we just like take the map of Panem and put it over the map of the United States, it looks like District 1 takes up the territory of Montana, Idaho, Utah, and Wyoming. One has a close relationship with the capital because they pollute the entire capital with their luxurious goods. In the Hunger Games tribute guide, it said that the excellent taste and craftsmanship from the runners is what keeps the capital bewigged and bedazzled. A lot of people in the capital wear wigs, apparently. District 1 over here is doing a really good job for the capital. And a massive disservice for humanity. In this district, they produce the tacky furniture, the dye that makes their hairs different color, or their dogs pink, the glass bowls we put life-threatening berries in, the crowns, the tacky clothing, the beauty products that they use on the tributes in the remake center. And when reflecting on Effie's incoherent rant about how she can turn coal into pearls, Katniss claims that District 1 has a machine that can turn graphite into diamonds. Thanks to their hard work, it sustains this really overindulgent mess, filled with snobs and narcissists, dressing up in really over-the-top outfits, which are really just nonsensical outfits devoid of any profound sense of meaning or identity. So basically, like, every single person at the Met Gala. Katniss Everdeen thinks that the kids in District 1 received ridiculous names, as they do have really materialistic names like Gloss, Velverine, Marvel, Cashmere, and so on. So naturally, District 1 is going to be the most wealth-stricken out of the litter. Though don't get me wrong, citizens of District 1 still go hungry, as a small portion of the population still relies on Tessera. With the citizens of District 1 a little happier with the capital, 1 is one of the districts to produce career tributes. But you can also call them careers, just in case you want to abbreviate it and save time. That way, you don't have to say career tributes, you could just say career. and then save yourself the headache and the hassle of not saying career tributes. Career tributes are typically from districts 1, 2, and 4. Why did they skip 3? Who knows? The careers are well trained and well fed their entire life just for this one event. And the careers are often going to volunteer on their own free will, seeing it as an honor to compete. Is something that a lot of the other tributes from the districts do not agree with. In the movie adaptation of the first Hunger Games, there's this moment where Cato really shows us how much pressure the career tributes go through. Like, there's this moment of clarity where Cato realizes that his entire life was leading up to him dying pointlessly in the arena. It's technically against the rules for tributes to train before they reach the capital, but this rule doesn't apply to 1, 2, not you, and 4. District 1 tributes are going to have the best odds when it comes to placing bets, so subsequently District 1 is going to be receiving more sponsors. And on top of that, coming from the wealthiest district, if they're like cool with people in their hometown, guess what? Those people have a better chance of pooling their money together so that they can send a gift to their tribute in the arena. You know what? It's almost as if the Hunger Games was rigged from the start. I don't know, let's put it this way. During the 75th Hunger Games, when they brought back the victors for round 2, the pool of victors from District 1 was the largest in comparison to any other district. Okay, so we know by now that District 1 careers are definitely gonna win, but they often lose to a little thing called hubris. Earlier Hunger Games tributes like Facet and Velverine didn't do so well. During the 10th Hunger Games, these two were shot down by peacekeepers after trying to escape from the capital. The reason District 1 tributes weren't at their best during this time was because this was the time of the 10th Hunger Games, when no one cared about the Hunger Games, so no tributes had the training or any real advantage. Actually, the only advantage that one really had was that they were better fed than the other tributes. Actually, that probably wasn't an advantage because they didn't really know how to fast properly. Plus, the capital's propaganda wasn't on point yet, so there was much less of a diluted sense of pride in District 1. But as time went on, and people like Coriolanus Snow kept improving the games, District 1 tributes would go on to just completely decimate the playing field. There was this website named Capital Couture, which is now defunct, but it was created to promote the Hunger Games films back in 2015. On this site were tour photos of Augustus Braun, the victor of the 76 Hunger Games. Braun was considered to be the cavalier career, as the capital duly sung his praises as he toured the districts, bringing with him a message of prosperity and reconciliation to the people. Due to District 1's loyalty to the capital, Katniss and Peeta were instructed not to trust anyone from that district when making alliances, especially during the 75th Hunger Games.
Don't trust 1 and 2.
Even though they weren't with the resistance, Gloss and Cashmere were actually pretty nice to Katniss. While in the Third Quarter Quell Training Center, they invited her over to the hammock making station so that they could all make hammocks together, because that's where people learn how to make hammock. Granted, they were probably focused on making her an ally because they saw her do this. Gloss won the 63rd Games, and his sister Cashmere, who he mentored, won the year after him. In the book Catching Fire, it's said, or written, in the 50th Hunger Games, the golden fluffy carnivorous squirrels claimed the third remaining tribute, leaving only Haymitch and a District 1 career. Out of the 48 tributes that year, it was just the two of them to vie for the crown. I love that Collins used the word vie right there. No one uses the word vie anymore. Anyway, this District 1 tribute was huge, and she also had the speed. It's like she harnessed the power of a bear. Haymitch and the bear, they beat the life out of each other. This fight ended when Haymitch felt the need to run away. With the career tribute chasing him, Haymitch ran all the way to this cliff, a cliff that he was playing with earlier that day. He threw himself off the cliff, but because it's the boundary of the arena, he got tossed right back up. When Haymitch arrived at the cliff, the career threw an axe at him, but then she missed, and the axe went right off the edge. Little did she know, the boundary of the arena is gonna toss that axe right back up at her. With the axe impaling her head situation, it ruined her chances of winning the second quarter quell. This resulted in an uncommon loss for her career and a very rare win for District 12. Like I said, hubris. The next time a District 12 tribute would take out a career from District 1 was when Katniss sent the tracker jackers on Glimmer and when she shot an arrow through Marvel's chest. Oh wow, come to think of it, Katniss takes out all of District 1 in the 74th. During the 75th Games, Katniss went round 2 when it came to shooting an arrow through a District 1 career tribute's chest, because she initially shot Marvel in the chest with an arrow, and then she would go on to shoot Gloss in the chest with an arrow. And Joanna Mason took out Cashmere with an axe, which is fitting because of the whole axe throwing incident during the 50th Hunger Games. The year Katniss entered the games, an unnamed career tribute from District 1 won the games by using the good old cave in the tribute's head in with a brick method. If you were a victor from District 1, it didn't really secure your likeliness to survive in the arena, but it also didn't secure your safety during the Second Rebellion, as the victors were targeted from both sides. The capital killed victors they suspected to be rebels, and the rebels killed those who they suspected to be allied with the capital. Beatty claims that that's the price of being a celebrity. By the end of the Second Rebellion, none of the victors out of District 1 survived the whole affair. Somebody in the comments the other day asked the question, do you think Cato would be a rebel, or do you think he would be a peacekeeper? And the way that I interpreted that question was that, do you think Cato would be a rebel like Katniss, or do you think he would play the role of someone like Peeta? Cato's mini breakdown towards the end of the 74th led me to believe that he is aware of how twisted the games are and what they've made him become. I think that if given the opportunity, Cato would most likely jump to the side of the Second Rebellion, but there wouldn't be a Second Rebellion if he didn't die in the most horrible and painful way possible. On that note, let's move over to District 2. Masonry. They are famous for their impeccable stonework, and according to the tribute guide, its citizens are also known individually for their strength. They are responsible for building this and this and all of this. And because of the amount of work that needs to be done in this district, it's the largest district in terms of population. Like District 1, District 2 is resting right up against the capital. And I'm going to tell you why I find this district to be one of the most interesting districts of the districts. During the time of the Dark Days, the capital decimated 13 and we're like, well, we did that. But now we need someone to step up and produce a bunch of weapons and military equipment for us. That job was given to District 2. Flint's father seized an incredibly rare, but not impossible opportunity that gave the Plinths a life in the district, as he was a weapon manufacturer who sided with the president of Panem. That's how Sejanus Flint's father ended up making bank. Flint's father seized an incredibly rare, but not impossible opportunity that gave the Plinths a life in the district. It was, however, unprecedented for somebody like Sejanus to attend the academy that Snow was attending. The only reason they made an exception for him was due to his father making a pretty large donation due to the whole school needing post-war reconstruction thing. District 2 was composed of a series of villages spread across mountains, as each village would neighbor a mining facility. So within the mountains, you would have these massive stone quarries. When District 13 left the chat for 75 years, the capital relocated the military, aka the peacekeepers, to District 2. And then they constructed the Nut, which is a massive quarry that was turned into an impenetrable fortress located in the center of this mountain right here. This was meant to replace District 13's underground stronghold. The Nut houses the heart of the capital's military, and the mountain fortress received its nickname, the Nut, because Plutarch Heavensby claimed it was a tough nut to crack, as getting into it was almost impossible. Plutarch later regretted calling this fortress the Nut because the implication that it was a tough nut to crack discouraged rebel leaders and lowered morale, which is the opposite of what he intended to do. Well, the Nut was replacing 13's stronghold. It wasn't as impenetrable as 13's underground structure, as it was made out of old mines that were renovated. So inside the structure were cavernous spaces with slabs of stone that had been cut out and taken to the capital. 13's bunker was being fortified for centuries, while the Nut was sort of a makeshift thing. It was a mediocre attempt at creating perfection. It's like trying to recreate Michelangelo's David, but just not being able to do it. But you got somewhere close, which is nice. Surrounding the capital are nuclear missiles, aircrafts, and troops. But the most significant chunk of their power resides here. It's filled with computer banks, meeting rooms, which are very dangerous, barracks, and arsenals. The only entrances and exits they have are a hangar for one hovercraft and narrow, heavily fortified tunnels. This is the most important structure the capital had during the war. So taking the Nut was the most essential thing for the rebels to do. District 2 still had all the benefits of District 1, as it would produce stuff like career tributes. If you're a citizen of District 2, you get like 2 career options. You can either work in the quarry as a mine worker, or you become educated and work at the Nut. Actually, there's always the option of becoming a peacekeeper and getting relocated to any of the other districts. For that reason, District 2 seemed to be the most divided district during the Second Rebellion. Some citizens were loyal to the capital, while others didn't hesitate to join the rebels. It was really the mine workers who became the resistance in District 2. During the events of Mockingjay, Katniss makes note that the District 2 rebels were babied by the capital. A lot of them were decently fed and cared for throughout their childhood, which ended up making them way more susceptible to the capital's propaganda. Commander Lime was a previous victor of District 2. No one mentioned what Hunger Games she participated in, so we don't know a lot about her, other than the fact that she's middle-aged, meaning she competed in the Hunger Games a generation ago. She most likely competed anywhere between the 43rd 43rd Hunger Games and the 49th Hunger Games. Definitely before Haymitch's second quarter quell. Come to think of it, Lime could have been Cato and Clove's mentor during the 74th Hunger Games, or she could have been Enobaria and Brutus's mentor during the 75th. Anyway, you can see Commander Lime right here strategizing to take down the Nut. During this meeting, Gale, being fueled by his hatred, by his blind hatred for the capital, had the idea of not capturing the Nut, but starting an uncontrollable avalanche to block the entrances. Every district has their struggles, but District 2 really does suffer from floods, mudslides, and most dangerous of all, avalanches. If the rebels could create an avalanche, it would completely trap the enemy inside and cut off all their resources. And the avalanche would eventually wipe out everyone inside because the ventilation system was subpar in comparison to the one in District 13. So they really wouldn't have fresh air for long. With the majority of workers in the Nut being citizens from District 2, Lime wanted to give them a chance to surrender. Beatty, helping orchestrate this entire plan, agreed with Lime because he was a very logical person. But then they went ahead and did it. We don't know exactly what happened to Commander Lime during the war, as she's not present during Coin's meeting with the previous victors, so it's safe to assume that Lime did not survive the Second Rebellion. During the 10th Hunger Games, the tributes from 2, Marcus and Sabin, they faced a similar, if not worse fate than the tributes from District 1, as those District 2 tributes also tried to escape. One of them died, but the other one was publicly displayed in the arena in not the most beneficial way to their health. After this, Sejanus Plinth, former District 2 resident, snuck into the arena. He went up to Marcus, the dead tribute that he mentored, and continued a tradition they have in 2, that after someone you love or respect dies, you sprinkle breadcrumbs over their body. This is so you could give them food on their journey to back wherever they came from. Why bread? It's the Hunger Games. There's always going to be bread involved somehow. During the 75th Hunger Games, the male victor from 2, Brutus, looked like he was in his mid-40s, meaning he probably competed around the same time as Commander Lime. And apparently he couldn't wait to get back into the arena. The female victor from 2, Enobaria, specialized in stuff like hand-to-hand combat, but she's best known for ripping out another tribute's throat using just her teeth. After becoming famous for this not chill thing, she had her teeth cosmetically altered into fangs, as well as had them inlaid with gold. But in the movie version, Haymitch claims that she filed her teeth into fangs so that she could rip people's throats out, implying that she did it before she entered the arena of her initial games, not after the fact. And by the end of the Second Rebellion, Enobaria was the last remaining victor of her district. In District 3, we have technology. This is where Panem, this place, gets all of their technological inventions. They make less military tech and more of stuff like gadgets like TV remotes, TVs, and even stuff like the drones or the parachute packages that they send into the arenas. Children in the schools of 12 learn how to do stuff like audio editing so that they can develop and work on these techniques of editing and manipulating somebody's real voice to make it sound like somebody else's loved one screaming out in pain. This technique was used in the Clock of Doom arena during the 75th games, specifically in the 4 to 5 o'clock zone that was filled with jabberjays playing fake recordings of Katniss and Finnick's loved ones screaming out for help. Oh, something I love about how nerdy this district is the fact that they don't eat bread in the form of loaf. No, instead they prefer having a pile of bite-sized square piece rolls, because I guess they found this method way more efficient. Though these tributes are not the best warriors, they can still win the games using their intellect and ingenuity, something that they very much need because they're sure as heck not going to get any sponsors for their charisma.
The Quarter Crow were written into law by men. Certainly it can be unwritten.
They're kind of socially awkward as they spend most of their time working on gadgets or just being in front of their computer. In the book version of Songbirds and Snakes, during the 10th games, Cirque and Teslie immediately started ripping into some fallen drones. Cirque was removing a rectangular battery, and Teslie was seen reattaching some wires. By the way, Cirque is an abbreviation for the word circuit, like a circuit board, and Teslie is a more feminine play on the name Tesla, like Nikola Tesla, the futurist responsible for revolutionizing how we generate electricity, how we transmit that electricity, and contributed heavily to our modern day alternating current electricity supply system. Way later in the games, Teslie showed up with an altered drone. She had a cable that was hanging off of it and it was connected to her wrist. Teslie launched the drone back up into the air, and using this method, she somehow found a way to hack incoming drones, controlling them to attack her fellow tribute, Mizzen. A delivery drone came into the arena to drop something off to Mizzen, but then as the drone was leaving, it just comes back with its claws out, and then it began looping around him, him. Two more drones arrived, and then they dropped the water and cheese they were carrying to join the other drone that was menacingly circling around Mizzen. Witnesses say that it was like watching bees in a honeypot. Then the drones began to hit Mizzen, causing him to lose his balance and fall off the structure that he was standing on. Needless to say, Mizzen did not win. Beatty won the games by electrocuting 6 tributes at once, and Wyrus was the one to figure out that the tropical arena was just one big clock. But intellect can only take you so far, because after Tesla took out Mizzen, she immediately received an axe to the face, and Wyrus got her throat cut, and Cirque was taken out by the snakes. But if you watch the movies, he receives a trident to the chest, all thanks to Coral. The District 3 tributes in the 74th Hunger Games weren't given names, so Tribute Boy was killed by Kato, and Tribute Girl was Dunzoed in the bloodbath. During the Second Rebellion, victors from 3, as well as 4, 7, 8, and 11, were working with Plutarch Heavensby to get Katniss and Peeta out of the arena, starting with victors like Beatty. Beatty was one of the people to redesign the underground network that transmits all the programming through Panem, which played a huge role in streaming District 13's propaganda, or propos, to all of the defeated districts. After Beatty and 13 were able to stream the capital, destroying the hospital in 8 that was filled with defenseless civilians. You remember the whole, if we burn, you burn with us! The rebels, who were barely maintaining a foothold in several districts, rallied after seeing this broadcast, and the rebels were able to take over District 3. With Wyrus, Beatty's district partner, losing her life to Gloss in the 75th, Beatty was the only surviving victor from District 3. Let's swim over to District 4, where they do all the swimming and the fishing. If you like shrimp and crab meat, this is the place to be. District 4 is the midway point between the wealthy districts and the non-wealthy districts, and it's the last district to produce careers. Even back during the 10th games, when Snow was waiting to find out which tribute he was going to be assigned to, he mentions that District 4 were contenders with 1 and 2, mainly due to their work ethic, as they spend all day, every day, fishing, which can be a physically demanding job. Plus, District 4 citizens start working at a very young age. That's why tributes like Finnick or Coral are highly skilled at using their tridents. And Mizzen is skilled at using his net, but Coral's trident skills and Mizzen's sick net skills could only get them so far. Mizzen fell to his death because of the hacked drones in the books, and then if you're watching the movies, he fell to his death and then was consumed by the snakes. And Coral was also consumed by Dr. Gull's snakes. The whole being raised in the art of fishing most certainly did not help the iconic Tribute Boy and Tribute Girl while in the forest arena in the 74th Hunger Games, as Girl was taken out by the Tracker Jackers, and Boy didn't even make it that far as he was taken out during the bloodbath. Like I said, it didn't help that they were in unfamiliar territory. I guess you could say they were fish out of water. But the aquatic skill set really did come through for these 3 victors standing next to Finnick during the 3rd quarter quell reaping, and it also helped Annie Cresta and Megs Flanagan survive in the arena. Megs is an OG victor who won the 11th games. She was 80 years old, 1 year younger than Lucy Gray Baird. It's interesting to think that Lucy Gray would have been around Meg's age at the time of the 75th. Megs' accent and garbled speech are due to a possible stroke she had, but that didn't stop her from hand gesturing that she wants to volunteer as tribute to take Annie Cresta's place, with the understanding that she was definitely going to be doomed in the Clock of Doom arena, as Megs needed a cane to walk on stage during the reaping ceremony. And in the books, Finnick had to take a branch and quickly fashion a cane out of it for her in the tropical arena. But in the movies, she seems more capable of walking on her own, and when they need to run away, Finnick carries her on his back. Since Megs won the 11th Hunger Games, the year Snow implemented the whole Victor's Village concept, Megs was the first victor to receive a Victor's Village home, and she was the first victor to go on a victory tour. Back before the website for Capital Couture was erased from the internet, here's some of the promotional images that they had for the victory tour. Megs was highly skilled at using fish hooks, and Katniss claimed that her fish hooks were probably the best chance of getting a meal in the tropical arena. Because honestly, Megs could make a decent fish hook out of anything. A thorn, a wishbone, an earring, my crushed and broken dreams, etc. But she's seen wearing a wedding ring. Her experience with being married and probably having a happy life with somebody who may have passed by that point is what gave her the willpower to volunteer for Annie Cresta. And a contributing factor to her volunteering is the fact that she used to mentor Finnick Odair, and she probably thought Finnick had a good chance of surviving the arena. So in her mind, she's like, I'm gonna give these 2 lovebirds a chance. Oh yeah, Finnick Odair. Okay, so Finnick Odair was crowned during the 65th Hunger Games at the age of 14, making him the youngest victor in all of the history of the Hunger Games. Being from District 4, Finnick has incredible swimming capabilities, which is how he ends up being able to reach the tropical cornucopia just as fast as someone like Katniss. And spending all that time in swimming culture is how he knew CPR, which was actually really useful because he used it to save Peeta's life, one of the 2 people he swore to protect. Honestly, someone like Finnick Odair was the perfect ally to have in the tropical arena. Finnick, the guy that I was just talking about, did eventually get married to another victor from the same district. Can you guess who it is? It's Annie Cresta. The entire time it was Annie Cresta. He married Annie Cresta. By the way, the wedding ceremonies in their district have these nets woven from long grass that will cover the couple during their vows. Then the couple's gonna touch each other's lips with salt water, and they have someone in the background play the ancient wedding song. This is part of the whole comparing marriage to a sea voyage or something. Annie Cresta was the winner of the 70th Hunger Games. She allegedly went mad when her district partner got beheaded, so she ran off and hid somewhere while an earthquake broke a dam in the arena, because the arena apparently had a dam, and this caused the entirety of the arena to be flooded, wiping out all of the tributes except for Annie, because she was from District 4 and she was the best swimmer there. Before the victors entered the third quarter quell, it said that the capital was trying to cover up a seafood shortage that was going on for weeks, claiming it wasn't due to a revolution taking place. No, it was due to some bad weather going on for weeks across 4 different states. Annie Cresta was the only remaining victor from District 4 by the end of the Second Rebellion, somebody who stood by the morals and ideals that she shared with her deceased husband Finnick, as she voted no to rebooting the Hunger Games. Miss Everdeen, along with a bunch of other medical people from District 13, were working on developing a new hospital in District 4. District 5. The electric, solar, and nuclear power district. During the first rebellion, or failed rebellion, the capital's surveillance system depended heavily on a thing called electricity. Like most other technology at the time. Specifically, they needed electricity from the capital's grid, but the capital's power and the grid were surging constantly. It kept flickering on and off due to District 5 rebels constantly interfering with it, so the sirens in the capital became unreliable, meaning no one really knew when to seek shelter. District 5 would play another essential role in the Second Rebellion, as it was District 5 who got inspired by Katniss singing the Hanging Tree, and then went over to the hydroelectric dam, as we all do in times of rebellion, to then blow it up. For a moment there, the grid of the capital shut down completely, allowing District 13 soldiers and Gale to enter the capital and rescue the rest of the victors like Annie Cresta or Peeta Mellark. In the 10th games, High suffered from asthma the night before the games began. You know, before they started taking care of the tributes, causing him to lose before the games even began. But in the movie version, High got to see the arena on the worst day possible, but then he was killed in the bloodbath by Mizzen. Sol took a trident to the throat by Coral, and it really looks like Coral is the Cato of the 10th. In the 38th Hunger Games, District 5's Porter Millicent Tripp received a severe spinal injury during the final showdown, and was given this big neck brace, or how the Capitol likes to refer to it as a fashionable halo. During the 74th Games, the unnamed boy tribute died in the bloodbath, so that's pretty uneventful. But the female tribute, Foxface, saw Peeta collecting all these berries, and then she's like, you know what? If Peeta's collecting the berries, they must be safe to eat. They were not.
That's Nightlock, Peeta!
During the 75th Hunger Games, the victor from District 5 was unalived by Finnick Odair's trident, and the District 5 female victor was killed in that massive sea wave, the one in the 10 to 11 o'clock zone, which is why we do not go in the 10 to 11 o'clock zone during the time of 10 to 11. I guess that's all the information I know about District 5. District 6 is the land of transportation. The citizens of District 6, they make the motor vehicles, the trains that go into the capital, the freaking hovercrafts. And you know who can't use them? The citizens of District 6. The Hunger Games tribute guide claims that the citizens from here have little love for travel, which is a fancy way of saying you can make all the fun toys, but you don't get to play with them. We do. District 6 were the ones to create special trains and vehicles to get the slabs of stone out of District 2 and into the capital. When Peeta was all like, I'm Peeta, and Snow is using Tracker Jacker venom on me as well as other torture methods, so I have to say whatever the capital wants. Peeta claims that there was a derailed train with a pool of toxic waste spilling from one of the cars. I'm assuming he was referring to District 6 doing these acts of rebellion. You know, we don't know too much about 6, other than the history of their tributes and victors. During the 10th Hunger Games, Games, Otto and Ginny, were kind of knocked out of the competition when the arena got destroyed. Two of many tributes to be axed before the games even started. In the movies, Otto actually does make it into the arena, but he was taken out of the games off screen at some point, which is not that exciting. Otto's name kind of sounds like automobile, and Ginny is an anagram of engine. And the fun doesn't stop there. Titus, another Greek name. Here's the most accurate representation of Titus that I could give you, just because we've never seen his face in the movies. So a few years before the 74th Hunger Games, Titus entered the playing field and he stole the hearts of thousands. I'm kidding, he didn't. Instead, he disturbed the hearts of thousands, because this guy, this goober, he was a cannibal. At one point during the games, they kept having to send peacekeepers into the arena so that they could stun Titus with electrical guns, as the peacekeepers went to collect the bodies of the tributes he defeated. Because if they didn't do this, then Titus was going to start eating their bodies. I mean, it's not technically against the rules to do what Titus was doing, but something about the whole savage cannibalism unfolding live on television, it just didn't sit well with the capital audience. So in that moment, the game makers were like, okay, let's just airlift the bodies out from now on and remove them as quickly as possible to prevent another Titus from happening. But if Titus was so savage and so unstoppable, what happened to him? Shouldn't he be a victor? Like, why haven't we heard about him? Well, Katniss, and basically everyone who exists, suspected that the game makers activated a trap. In this case, an avalanche to take Titus out of the competition. You'll have to forgive them for this. For some reason, they didn't want this tribute gobbler out in the capital after the games ended, because he was most likely going to be the victor of that year. And just when he thought it couldn't get any more uneventful, during the 74th Hunger Games, the unnamed male and female tribute were taken out in the bloodbath. The victors in the 75th Games were Morphling addicts, which is what gave them the name Morphlings. Meet the Morphlings. These two consume a lot of Morphling, like almost as much as someone like Dean High's a Kite Bottom. I can't believe they didn't say that nickname in the movie. Both of them were bone thin and looking like emo kids in their 30s. They are both masters of camouflage, as they won by hiding from everyone else until everyone else was dead, which is basically how I play every single Battle Royale game. By the way, people say that the Morphlings are representative of a larger drug problem in District 6, and I'm just honestly gonna say you're wrong, because most victims in any of the districts struggle with drinking or morphling problems, or just like any way to cope with the aftermath of the games. We like the Morphlings because even though half the time they're mentally on another planet, they still had the sense and the courage to be part of the secret alliance with District 13 to protect Peeta and Katniss. The Morphlings being on 13's side is another reason why Haymitch communicates to Katniss and Peeta that they are not a threat. In fact, the female Morphling was willing to sacrifice herself to those big, scary, large carnivorous monkeys in order to save Peeta. So 6 is actually pretty cool. Well, besides Titus. Titus needs to chill. Oh, well, I guess he already did chill because of the whole avalanche. But District 7 is lumber. So the capital and other districts, I guess, can have things like tables and paper. District 7 may not have the fancy training of Districts 1, 2, and 4, but the District 7 tributes are known for their strength because they're spending every single day, like 24/7, chopping wood, becoming very familiar with tools like axes or saws. This is why District 7's victor, Joanna Mason, or tributes like Treach, are incredibly proficient with an axe. Like Rue in District 11 or Finnick in District 4, Joanna and Treach had been working in their fields since they were toddlers. During the third quarter quell, it was rumored that District 7 was one of the districts that already started the uprising. And that rumor was proven to be true, because even when Katniss woke up after the whole pew pew and Plutarch claims that the communications were down in 7, meaning the uprising was happening in 7 by the time Katniss was lifted out of the arena. In the book Mockingjay, it's implied that District 7, the lumber people, were the ones to destroy the dam. But I can understand why in the movies they chose to make District 5, the electric, solar, nuclear, and non-lumber powered district, to be the ones to take out the hydroelectric dam that was powering the capital. The only time we really got to see District 7 in the movies was when the workers sing Rue's 4-note run, and then they used their logging powers to start logging up those trees, as loggers do. And then they detonate a bunch of landmines below in order to explode a bunch of peacekeepers below. During the 10th Hunger Games, Treach, which I'm assuming is a play on the word tree, was absolutely demolished by Lucy Gray after she repeated what she did to Mayfair Lip and put one of those vivid psychedelic snakes down his shirt. But in the movies, Lucy Gray ends up sprinkling some of that rat poison through the vents, and Treach, who is inconveniently standing below the vents, he inhales it. And this was like the most over-the-top rat poison I think I've ever seen in any single movie. So when Treach inhaled it, he made like a tree and died. District 7's female tribute was Lamina. And look at this, another person get taken out of the competition by Coral, as Coral stabbed Lamina in the stomach, placing her 10th in the books, but 9th in the movies. So progress. During the 74th games, District 7's tributes follow in the tradition of not having any names, as well as following in the tradition of getting defeated in the bloodbath. During the 75th games, District 7 victors were involved in Plutarch's plan of protecting Peeta and Katniss. The female victor was Joanna Mason, the happiest person on Earth. She won the 71st games at the age of 17. And for that reason, on top of like the long list of reasons, she was one of the victors to vote yes to Hunger Games 2.0. The Capital's Children Edition. Blight, Joanna's district partner, was on the side of the Second Rebellion. Unfortunately, we didn't really get to see a lot of him after the 75th because he kind of died during the 75th, which is a really good excuse for not being seen after the 75th. When in the arena, he stumbled into the 1 to 2 o'clock zone, also known as the zone that has the thick, hot blood rain. And when trying to evade the rain, Blight pulled a Peeta, and then ran into the force field surrounding the arena. By the end of the Second Rebellion, Joanna was the only remaining victor of 7. District 8 is Textiles. They make stuff like the fabrics and these beautiful brocades that are typically favored in the capital. During Katniss and Peeta's victory tour, this district was the opposite of the definition of calm. Heck, they had an uprising before the quarter quell was even announced. At the beginning of the book Catching Fire, we learned some info about District 8 through Katniss's encounter with Bonnie and Twill. Katniss runs into these two while out hunting beyond the fence. Twill was in her mid-30s and Bonnie was just a teenager. The two of them managed to escape District 8 and were working on their way to get to District 13. They explained to Catnip that District 8 had a little uprising and that it happened during Peeta and Katniss's proposal, as the proposal was a mandatory viewing for everyone in Panem. So District 8 used this opportunity to have more people out in the streets after dark. And at 8 o'clock, because they're District 8, the uprising took place. They had teams of people ready to take the Justice Building, or the Peacekeepers' headquarters, or the Communication Center in the square. The crowd easily overran the Peacekeepers and everything was going according to plan. But then, more Peacekeepers arrived. In fact, they arrived by the thousands. And then hovercrafts came in, and then a bunch of bombs came in, and then they destroyed District 8's main city. It's suspected that somebody ratted on the District 8 rebels, and that's how the capital got there so quick. The failed uprising took out Twill's husband and Bonnie's entire family. When the residents were being put under lockdown, Bonnie and Twill stole some Peacekeepers uniforms and booked it. Because they were from the factory hellscape that is District 8, a place where you couldn't find a single blade of grass. The two of them had absolutely no idea how to survive in the wild, which is why during the 74th Hunger Games, the female tribute from District 8 was very ignorant when it came to surviving in nature. So she started a fire at night, which subsequently attracted the career pack. But I mean, at least she made it further than District 8's male tribute, who lost his chance at the title in the bloodbath. A lot of people go in the bloodbath. During the 10th games, the male tribute Bobbin was destroyed by Coriolanus Snow, somebody who wasn't even participating in the games. He wasn't even in it. And then Snow's the reason Wovey died, because he broke more rules, as Wovey was poisoned by the rat poison that Snow gave to Lucy Gray. But if we learned anything from the 74th Hunger Games, rules don't matter apparently. But you know, it's better if you're watching the movies, because Wovey wasn't killed by Snow's rat poison. Instead, she was taken out by the snakes. An ocean of snakes. Over in the edible insect station of the 3rd Quarter Quell Training Center, Katniss learned about the District 8 victors, Cecilia and Woof. Cecilia had 3 kids at home, and that's pretty much everything we know about her. She was also really nice too, which is really unfortunate because Inabaria did her signature move on Cecilia, which, as you know by now, is Inabaria ripping Cecilia's throat out using just her teeth, as we all do from time to time. Katniss actually grieved for Cecilia's death, especially after the whole she had 3 kids back home thing. Woof was really old and hard of hearing. He had absolutely no idea what was going on, because when they were in the edible insect station, Woof was trying to shove poisonous insects into his mouth. During the Second Rebellion, one of District 8's hospitals was visited by the Mockingjay. Before the hospital was, you know, this is where Katniss and her dream team filmed this very effective propo.
And if we burn, you burn with us.
a propo that really kicked the rebellion back into gear. So I always found it fitting that Commander Paler of District 8 went from a textile factory worker to a rebel leader and then became the next president of Panem. After Snow was very politely asked to leave office, and interim President Coin graciously stepped down from her position. District 9, also known as the 9th District. When going on a train that was just chugging on through District 9, future president of Panem, Coriolanus Snow, observed the buildings, the atmosphere, the culture, and he thought to himself, wow, what an ugly place. Something about the dystopian concrete buildings, the flaking paint. To be honest, I don't know what didn't sell him on the district. For some reason, there's not a lot going on in District 9. Oh, right. Okay, so they're the district that produces grain. So they're known as Panem's Bread Bowl. In the tribute guide, it said that District 9's amber waves of grain are an inspiration to us all. During the 10th Hunger Games, the female District 9er, Sheaf, lost her chance at the title when a failed attempt at a second rebellion collapsed the arena. For some reason, the concrete falling from the sky injured her, and she eventually succumbed to these injuries. But in the movies, she was killed in the bloodbath, which isn't any better. During the same year, the male District 9er Panlo was also toast due to the explosive activity happening at the arena, and he would later succumb to his injuries. But in the movies, he actually made it into the arena, which is better. However, he was the first tribute to get taken out. During the 74th games, the unnamed female tribute got taken out in the bloodbath, and the male tribute was taken out by Cloves throwing knives, when she was just throwing knives everywhere. So his presence gave Katniss a moment to escape Clove and the rest of the bloodbath. And during the 75th games, the male and female District 9 tributes, they died in the bloodbath, solidifying District 9 as the most uneventful district. The only thing we really heard about District 9 during the Second Rebellion was that there was a granary collapsing due to a fire. And I could be lying. I mean, it's not even confirmed that those were District 9 rebels. I'm just assuming it's District 9 because of the granaries and Panem's Bread Bowl. Even District 8 has granaries. Bonnie and Twill even mentioned that the District 8 rebels secured their granaries during the marriage proposal uprising. On top of that, I'm pretty sure that District 11 has granaries. Yeah. These are granaries. I think the point that I'm trying to make here is that District 9, you're not special or unique. You're mid. District 10 is Livestock. Imagine one big slaughterhouse filled with cattle and hogs. Arachne Crane's family, the same family as head game maker Seneca Crane, developed a plethora of luxury hotels and vacation destinations across District 10. I don't really know too much beyond that because it's just a little bit of information we get from Arachne Crane in a throwaway line, as Arachne was just going off about random stuff at that point. While District 10 was not part of the initial uprising during the Second Rebellion, 10 would eventually go on to supply District 13 with a whole bunch of meat. For those who don't know, when Greasy Say, this person right here, was running her store in the Hob, she would take wild dog meat, chop it up, and then put it into a large kettle. And then she had the audacious nature to go on and sell that soup to people, claiming that the meat was beef. But when Greasy was relocated to District 13, she worked in the kitchen. And all thanks to District 10, Greasy was finally able to make stew with real beef, and no one noticed. The one thing I liked about Annie and Finnick's wedding in 13 was that Dalton, the cattle guy from 10, was able to conduct the ceremony for the two because District 4's traditional wedding ceremony was similar to the one they conduct in 10. During the 10th games, District 10's tribute Brandy, she pulled the move of all moves. She sort of slit the throat of her mentor Arachne Crane, causing a bunch of peacekeepers to gun her down before the games could even begin. You know, I'm just gonna say it. Here's the 10th games. Here's a mess. I can't tell the difference. The male tribute from 10 Tanner, he was more tame, but he went goodnight due to a whole stab fest that was brought on by Coral's Trident and Mizen's Net. During the 74th games, the unnamed female tribute from 10 was bloodbathed in the bloodbath, but Katniss assumed that it was done by Cato and friends. During the 75th games, the unnamed female tribute was killed in, you guessed it, the bloodbath. The male tribute from 10 was brought into a new kind of slaughterhouse known as the 6 to 7 o'clock zone. We've never visually seen what's in this zone, but we do know that during the time of 6 to 7 o'clock, a massive mutation that's like the size of Bigfoot or something decided to pick the male tribute up and rip him apart. Imagine a place that's filled with beautiful orchards, fruit trees, and forced labor. You've arrived at District 11, the district of agriculture. Upon Katniss's first visit to 11, Katniss grew weary of the vastness of it all, how the orchards seemed to be endless, and everything was really spread out. 11 is a neighboring district to 12, so naturally and logically, they share the same kind of climate and ecosystem. Like Katniss and her family, Rue and other citizens of her district also know about the plant life and herbs surrounding them, mainly because that's where they have to work. Through this work, Rue learned about certain healing methods, like how to treat someone like Katniss with these leaves after they get stung by tracker jackers. Here's the thing about these puppies. The Capitol left up a bunch of tracker jacker nests around the districts after the first rebellion, leaving them in really inconvenient places, like, I don't know, places where people work. Since 11 was one of the districts not to shy away from child labor, tributes from 11 were contenders with the wealthier districts because of their work being very labor intensive. Like District 4, District 11 tributes are normally jacked due to how much the Capitol overworks them. During these very hazardous conditions, Rue and her fellow workers would sing throughout the day alongside the Mockingjays. This is why Rue actually really liked Katniss's Mockingjay pin, claiming that seeing the Mockingjay pin on her arena wear is what made Rue trust Katniss in the first place, which is the easiest way anyone's ever gained somebody else's trust. Rue became well acquainted with the Mockingjays after spending a lot of time in the tree line. Because there's no OSHA in District 11, the Capitol would send kids around Rue's size high up into the trees, like to the highest point you could possibly go. When Rue was this high, she was singing back and forth with the Songbirds for hours. The kids that would be sent to the top of the trees would be the first ones to see the red flag that signals it's quitting time. So in Rue's case, she would sing a special song, a little 4-note run letting everyone know that it's time to just stop what you're doing and go home, a song that was later used by her district and other districts during the Second Rebellion. I know what you may be thinking. Why was it that Rue, being a 12-year-old, was working when she should have been in school? During a conversation between Rue and Katniss, Rue states that they all get a break from school so they can work during the harvest. This was the first time Katniss learned about life in another district, as the Capitol prevented any of the districts from communicating with each other. 11 was the first known district to sponsor another district in the Hunger Games. When District 1's Marvel took out Rue with the whole classic, "I'm gonna throw a spear through your stomach" move, Katniss becomes the ultimate bro and sings Deep in the Meadow to Rue, as well as a very kind gesture of laying out a bunch of flowers surrounding Rue's body. It was basically telling the Capitol to go f themselves and that they can right with and all the way to the gates of Valhalla. District 11 was also the first district to sign the Treaty of Treason, so I find it very poetic that they were the first ones to ride out of the districts during the Second Rebellion. The further out from the capital you are, the less anyone's gonna care about you, and I think the lack of interest is represented really well with their town square, as their Justice Building has a huge marble structure that would have been a thing of beauty in the past, but you know, time took a toll on it, as now the roof is sagging in and the ivory is taking over the crumbling facade, and the square itself is ringed with rundown storefronts, most of which are abandoned. District 11 was already uprising during the Third Quarter Quell, but sometime after the 75th Games were interrupted, the rebels weren't doing well. That was until the whole inspired the rebels in 11 to finally take the district, which is huge because cutting off the food supply for the capital is as important as taking out something like the nut. In Hunger Games 10, the female tribute from 11, Dill, she died of tuberculosis, and that's kind of hard to show in a cinematic medium, so in the movie adaptation of Songbirds and Snakes, they had her drink some water that was poisoned by Lucy Gray, and that year the male tribute from 10 was Reaper. It's no question why on Panem would somebody name their kid Reaper, but he clearly didn't get the memo that the names are emblematic of the industry of their district, because Reaper isn't referring to the Grim Reaper, but the act of reaping, as in cutting and harvesting grain. See, it's not that threatening of a name, unless you're in the arena with him and a scythe. If so, the definition can change pretty quickly. In the books, Reaper was poisoned by Lucy Gray, and they played a game of cat and mouse until Reaper was really exhausted and then he died. But this was back in the day before they had the trackers in their arms. The game makers had no way of telling if he stopped breathing or not, so they waited like a half hour to make sure Reaper was gone. It wasn't until Lucy Gray came out of hiding to check his pulse herself. In the movies, Reaper was just consumed by the rainbow snakes. I don't really prefer his death in the movies over his death in the books, but I do like that they essentially made him the Katniss Everdeen of the 10th Games. Him removing the capital flag and covering the fallen tributes with it had the same exact energy as Katniss laying the flowers around Rue. We haven't really talked about Thresh much in my videos, so let's talk about Thresh. In the books, Thresh is like 6.5 feet tall and built like an ox, but in the tribute guide, he's 6 feet. Thresh was apparently built like an ox to the point where half the sponsors were considering him. Katniss would even bet on him herself. When Katniss sees Thresh in the arena, she claims that Thresh seems more massive and more powerful than she could recall. If anything, he actually gained weight in the arena, and I think this is just the shock and adrenaline speaking of seeing Thresh for the first time and watching him beat the life out of Clove. Needless to say, Thresh went straight for the cornucopia. Even the careers wanted to team up with Thresh from the beginning, but he wouldn't do it. Instead, he became this ominous presence that everyone feared in the arena. In the 74th arena, there was a field of grass as high as Peeta's shoulders, but the other career tributes avoided it, like how I avoid calls about my car's extended warranty, mainly because no one wanted to track down Thresh in the grass. This was Thresh's home field advantage right here, which gave a sinister feeling to this entire field. Plus, there were snakes and rabid animals in there, and quicksand. Unlike our childhoods, it turns out the children of Panem should have actually grown up fearing quicksand. But you know what? I don't know. I may be 27 years old, but I'm still anticipating that attack from quicksand. The tribute guide says that Thresh's weapon of choice is rock, and I think that's perfection, as it's referring to this rock that was around the size of a loaf of bread, the same rock that he used to end Clove after her villain rant. But like Reaper, Thresh's real weapon of choice would be a reaping scythe, a tool that he would have had so much practice with while harvesting grain. After the reaping, Thresh wouldn't talk to anyone. During his interview with Caesar Flickerman, he actually topped Beatty in the most awkward interview contest, as Thresh ignored all of Caesar's charismatic banter, and anytime Thresh answered a question, he would reply in an abrupt yes or no, or just remain silent. And I think that definitely explains why Katniss thought her and Thresh would be friends if Thresh lived in District 12. The only time Thresh was really talkative was during his encounter with Clove and Katniss, and that was just because he needed to confirm what happened to Rue. It's been a decade, and there's one thing that I still haven't gotten over yet, and now that I finally have an audience of 2 people, I feel like I now earn the right to complain about a really insignificant detail that no one cares about, which is that in the books, Thresh was killed by Cato, right? Like, we're on the same page about that. Well, in the movies, it's implied that those really inconvenient mutated tributes that were turned into vicious hounds were the things that took Thresh out of the equation. But in Mockingjay Part 2, Katniss tells the guy from District 2, whatever his name is, in their very relaxing conversation, Katniss claims this.
That's why I killed Cato. And he killed Thresh.
In the logic of the books, it makes sense that she would be saying that, but in the logic of the movies and the history of the movies, it just doesn't make sense. I don't know, unwatchable. Moving on, District 12. The coal miners. They're located all the way over here. They don't have vehicles, they don't have dreams, they don't have food, but at least they have the Hob, which is an abandoned warehouse that once stored coal, until the transportation district introduced a more efficient way to get coal from the mines to the capital. So the Hob was renovated from this warehouse and turned into a place where people trade illegally poached animals or other contraband. And back in the day, it was a place where people like Lucy Gray and her covey would perform music. The Hob is essentially the black market of District 12. The only reason they allow the Hob to exist is because peacekeepers like Snow participate in the trade. Well, that was until Romulus Thread took over as head peacekeeper of 12 and then burned the Hob down. Really an emblematic gesture of his no-nonsense policy. 12 has a town square with bakeries, apothecary shops, and wealthier snobby people. And they also have the Seam, a place where once lived Katniss, Primrose, Prim's goat lady, Miss Everdeen, Gale, Gale's entire family, and this cat. District 12 is a poor district. In fact, it's like the poorest of the districts. But the Seam is said to be the poorest part of the district, meaning Katniss was living in the worst place to live in all of Panem. On the bright side, people in this district are named after stuff like herbs and plant life surrounding the Seam. For example, Primrose, Katniss, the cat that survived the second rebellion named Buttercup. After Lucy Gray finds out that Snow had Sejanus Plinth killed, Lucy Gray abandoned him in the forest, leaving a snake to bite him and a bunch of Mockingjays to mock him. And believe it or not, Snow didn't take it well. He claimed that Lucy could fly around District 12 all she liked, but she and her Mockingjays could never harm him again. The animosity that Snow is harboring for 12 is probably why Snow in the capital transformed it into the worst district. In the Hunger Games tribute guide, it said that District 12 is a crucial one. It said that the brave and hardy workers descend deep into the earth to mine the coal that keeps our nation running. But I think Katniss's description of 12 is a little bit more accurate. Of District 12, where you can starve to death in safety. In whatever kind of video this is, we discussed just that districts like District 5 are producing electrical, solar, and nuclear power. It's even written in the books that District 7 had dams. You know, and those dams may be producing electricity too. It's not to say that coal wasn't used to power the districts as well as the capital, but Panem sure as heck didn't rely on coal as much as it used to, as this one dam was supplying the capital with all the power they needed by the time of the 74th games. All non-career districts still stood a chance against the careers. It's District 12 that never had any victors because they were stuck in school, unable to learn any special skills. Katniss was the exception in 12 because she deviated from the typical teenage life of a 12er. Most people in Katniss's home district know nothing about the flora surrounding them, yet Rue had an advanced knowledge of the plants inhabiting her district. Plus, Joanna Mason of District 7 was tossing around axes since she could toddle, similar to Finnick and his trident, or Beatty and his computer. Watching these tributes / victors is what made Catnip realize how disadvantaged the District 12 tributes have been over the years, especially with the whole not being placed in the coal mines until they were 18. There are things you do in a mine that could come in handy in the games. For example, wielding a pick in order to gain some muscle from wielding said pick, as well as working with explosives so that they can blow things up. But the 12ers are going to learn these skills too late because they're no longer eligible for the games after they're eligible for the mines. You know, I'm starting to think that President Snow may have had such a grudge against District 12 that he didn't want any of the tributes to have any skills going into the games, so that the district would keep losing year after year. So how did the tributes and victors do throughout the years? Most of the tributes ended up probably dying in the bloodbath, but during the 10th games, Lucy Gray and Jessup Diggs were picked from the raffle. Actually, that's not true. The odds were never in Lucy's favor because it was rigged against her. Lucy's odds weren't in her favor because it was never left up to chance. Mayor Lip, father of everyone's favorite human being, Mayfair Lip, made it so Lucy Gray's name would get selected. Why would he do this, you ask? Well, because Mayfair was into Billy Taupe, but Billy Taupe was dating Lucy Gray. It was the whole thing. Lucy ended up being the victor that year, but her district partner, Jessup Diggs, didn't do as well. He suffered from a condition called rabies, as well as a condition called falling from a really high up point and then breaking all the bones in your body, and then no longer breathing. Moving on to the next ones. During the 50th games, or second quarter quell, Hamish Abernathy, Macy Lee Donner, an unnamed male tribute, and an unnamed female tribute from District 12 were sacrificed to the games. It's not reported how the two unnamed tributes died in the arena, but Macy Lee ended up getting stabbed in the neck by nightmare flamingos, and Hamish won against the career tribute that I was talking about earlier in this video. In the movies, Katniss Everdeen was the first volunteer from District 12.
District 12's very first volunteer.
But in the books, it said that District 12 hadn't had a volunteer in a very long time. And I kind of prefer the movie version because it makes her volunteering way more intense, except for Bread Boy Peta because he was just called to the stage like normal. During the 74th games, due to a ridiculous last-minute change, Peta and Katniss became the first ever co-victors. And during the 75th games, or third quarter quell, the arena blew up. And among the chaos, the Capitol grabbed Peta and District 13 got Katniss. So we can just say that the third quarter quell ended in a tie. Speaking of which, the only victor's village we saw was in 12. During the Second Rebellion, 12 was eventually given the District 8 treatment, but after the districts finally won the war, the bones of 7,000 plus people were buried in this meadow next to the seam. And District 12 was starting to use machines from the capital to break ground on a new factory that would make medicines to distribute to all of Panem. District 13, the place that we've been hearing about ever since Mayor Undersea's very monotonous and boring speech from the 74th Reaping. He recited the mantra that the 12 districts were defeated and the 13th obliterated. It said that the supposedly destroyed district was working on nuclear energy, but really they were focusing on the nuclear weapons program for the capital. They also made all of this, developing weapons, military equipment, vehicles, and other kinds of missiles. The entire district served as the place for recruitment and the training of peacekeepers, really aiding in making Panem the military-industrial complex it was. 13 was also out here mining graphite, so it looks like 12 and 2 weren't the only mine workers out here. And it makes sense as to why 13 was mining graphite, because graphite plays a very important role when developing nuclear power plants or their nuclear weapons, as this material is used for high temperature control rods in nuclear reactors, and it's used as a moderator and a reflector in nuclear missiles. District 13's sprawling complex was a mere 1 week's journey on foot from the seam in District 12. It's filled with blocks upon blocks of factories, research facilities, etc. This substantial underground facility was developed over centuries. It would serve the purpose of a clandestine refuge for government leaders in the time of war, or a last resort for humanity if the world above became unlivable. At the academy in the capital, students are taught that the first rebellion was incited by the rebels in District 13. And this is actually pretty accurate, and not just a piece of made-up propaganda from the capital, as they were able to access and disseminate arms to their cohorts around Panem. During the Dark Days, the rebels in 13 had the idea to rebel and then target all of their nuclear weapons at the capital. And then they tried to strike up a bargain. 13 proposed that they would play dead in exchange of being left alone by the capital's authoritarian government. So you had the nuclear arsenal of District 13 on one side and the capital's nuclear arsenal on the other. It was the classic mutually assured destruction scenario, you know. So the capital received this offer and they made the very calm and peaceful decision of nuking 13. The capital thought it was over. They demolished any visible remains of the district and completely cut them off from the outside, hoping that the ones left in the sprawling complex would die out due to lack of resources. The whole area was never visited again, and it was often considered unlivable due to the high levels of radiation. After that, 13's entire industry was transferred over to District 2, which is really inconvenient for Snow's family because his family fortune was invested in the munitions industry in 13, so you can imagine their frustration when the first rebellion happened, and then the entire district went boom. With the military manufacturing getting transferred to 2, it's almost as if Snow's family fortune was transferred over to the plinths. 13 was just a bunch of people huddled in a chamber below ground. With their population absolutely decimated and having no one to turn to for aid, they had to quickly learn how to become self-sufficient. Just like Katniss or the Mockingjay or Lucy Gray, against all odds, District 13 was resilient against the capital. Ever since then, they were strict about stuff like sharing resources, and thanks to their strenuous discipline and constant vigilance, 13 successfully turned their citizens into an army and built a new society, and their militaristic way of life did not change over the years. By the time of the 75th games, they still maintained the same frugality. Waste was practically a criminal activity in 13. While you don't starve or have the Hunger Games in 13, it's still sadly a place that lacks any fun, and no one was given special treatment. Even people like Katniss Everdeen, who are the Mockingjay, lived the same lifestyle as everyone else in the district, as Katniss, her mother, and her sister bunked in compartment 307, which is located somewhere all the way up here. Every morning, a citizen of 13 has to stick their arm into a contraption. What this contraption ends up doing is writing your entire schedule in pink ink on your arm. And then you would read that it would be like 7:30 is breakfast, 8:30 a.m. you got to be in the education center like room 17, 10 a.m. is self-loathing, 12 p.m. lunch. You get the point. You've seen schedules before. For most of the day, the ink is indelible until 2200 hours when they schedule you for a bathing. By that point, the schedule is going to wash away easy in the water. And what I'm about to say doesn't apply to you if you work the night shift, but bedtime is at 22:30. And yes, for those wondering, you can go outside for sunlight and exercise, but it's at very strict points on your schedule. And if you miss an appointment on your schedule, you die. Nah, I'm just kidding. But if you deviate from the schedule, the consequences are pretty severe. So don't do it. Everyone in District 12 is overly programmed and somewhat lacking any sense of humor, most likely due to their leader. Here's everything we know about President Alma Coin. But we can safely assume that Coin lived underground her entire life, rose through the ranks, and was most likely voted into her position in a democratic way. Actually, you know what? In the movie Mockingjay Part 1, they added a little backstory to Coin that wasn't in the books. How Coin lost her husband and her daughter to the pox epidemic. The same epidemic that killed a bunch of people in District 13 and made a lot of them infertile. This did not help their birth rate. People still had scars from this pox epidemic, and the children were slightly disfigured from it. I like that they added this line to the movie because it gives us a better understanding as to why Coin is this dour, serious, non-charismatic individual, and why her district is the most boring, dreadful place to be on the planet. So anyway, if you're wanting to relocate to 13, they love getting new people from other districts because they are desperate for a quote-unquote new gene pool to repopulate with. So any refugee is granted automatic citizenship. Bonnie and Twill, the District 8 refugees that we were talking about earlier in this video, they weren't that far from their destination, but they didn't make it, which sucks.